everyone, my name's Becky Johnson and I'm the Conference Director with LSX Leaders in London. LSX stands for Life Science Executives. We're a community and network of senior life science decision makers across biotech, medtech and health tech businesses, pharma companies, investors in the healthcare space, as well as payers and providers and other key stakeholders in the healthcare sector. We work to connect our network through digital content, digital reports and executive insight, digital roundtables and other formats, and in more settled times, through a program of high-level, large-scale conferences, networking, partnering events, and showcases. Whilst these physical events cannot take place, we're pleased to continue to be able to connect people and share the expertise of our community through these digital formats. So, with just 1 week to go until the start of our USA CEO forums, I wanted to shine a spotlight on our Health Tech Startup Forum, open to the C-suite of US-based pre-Series A health tech and digital health companies. Glen Tullman, founder of Livongo and Transcarent, will be joining us for an intimate Q&A for all of the attendees of the Health Tech Startup. However, whilst the forum itself will be operating under Chatham House rule, I'm delighted to be able to offer you all a sneak peek into some of the conversations that may be happening on the day. It therefore gives me great pleasure to introduce Glen Tullman, who is chatting to Blake Dodge, Senior Healthcare Reporter for Business Insider. Blake, over to you.
Thanks, Becky. Hi, Glen. It's nice to see you.
Hi, Blake. It's great to see you, as always.
So I guess just to hop into questions, my first one for you is, what's happening in the industry that's made you want to get behind a company like Transcarent?
Well, I think that as we come out of, we move into a post-COVID era, and I say that with quotes around it because really we are still dealing with the tragic loss of life, with the economic damage, and with what we know will be an ongoing concern with behavioral health issues. People have really recognized how critical their health is. They've realized we're one community in health, but they've also seen the possibilities of what we could do, for example, with digital care. We've seen a dramatic shift in people's ability to get telehealth at home on their own terms. We've seen people be able to get digital virtual care in terms of physical therapy, for example, and other behavioral health issues. So once we've given them a taste of that, they've started to think of healthcare in a very different way. And on the other side of that equation, large self-insured employers and all of us who pay for care have started to demand something better from our healthcare system. You know, most of us, when we think about healthcare, we really want three things. We want unbiased information, tell us everything that's available. We want trusted guidance. Tell me what I should do. I'll make the decision, but give me trusted guidance. And last but not least, we want to know where to get that care, ease of access to valued care. And today our system really doesn't work like that. We get limited choices. You could actually, if you needed knee surgery, be walking by a surgery center that was half the cost, that had half the infection rate, and that was twice as good as where you're walking to, and your own health plan wouldn't tell you that. You can talk to people who give you not the best guidance, but guidance that supports their own network or the fact that they might be getting a rebate. And last but not least, when we finally find where we want to go, we can't always get there. And so we want to take the hurdles away and make it easier to stay healthy. We want to remove copays and co-insurance and narrow networks and all the things that frankly drive people like you and I crazy when we're trying to get great care. So that's what Transcarent's about.
Totally. Can you tell folks a little bit more about the business model and how the program works for folks?
Sure. Well, the business model is based on a simple assumption, and that is if you really focus on quality care and if you remove the friction, you can actually deliver better care and a better experience all at lower cost. And that's really what it is. And it's based in part on the learnings that we gained at Livongo. we made a bet, and that bet was if we focused on the experience and people believed that we really wanted to keep them healthy, then they would make better decisions. And if we gave them information, and you remember, because you were great to cover Livongo so much, but if you remember, we made strips free before they had co-pays and they had to pay for strips. And we said, if we make it easier for them, they'll actually stay healthier. And we were able to do that. So we brought a lot of the learnings from Livongo about experience, creating a great experience. And on the flip side, we knew there was a challenge in the industry. And the challenge was that large self-insured employers said there wasn't alignment between them and the payers, PBMs, and the health systems, because they said every time we spend more money, the payers, the PBMs, and the health systems make more money. So why would they ever really try to reduce costs? Like, you just aren't going to see them saying, next year we're going to cut revenues and cut profits to help the healthcare system. And so we wanted to create a model that had us fully aligned. So we said, we'll go at risk, and we will only make money when our partners, large self-insured employers, benefit. And we will always put first and foremost the health and the quality of services that we provide to our members. All of us, you, me, our families, will put that first. That was our commitment. So it's a very, very different kind of approach to healthcare than I think anybody's ever taken. And yet now we're starting to already see a shift. In fact, there was just an article that came out that said Amazon is going to move away from per employee per month cost for their telehealth service they just introduced. So again, I think we're already seeing sometimes all you have to do is announce an idea and everybody starts to react to it. And that's what we've seen with this new idea.
Totally. Can you tell folks how partnerships play into Transcarent? And then more broadly as an operator, like, can you give folks an idea of, where you draw the line between deciding to partner with someone, deciding to build something internally, and then to, alternatively have like serious conversations about M&A?
Sure. Well, first, what I'd say is this is a increasingly complicated world we live in, and healthcare was always complex from that perspective. So when we talk about partnerships, we have to think that we have friends, we have frenemies, and we have enemies. And at any one time, they can be all of the above. So at Livongo, Amazon was a terrific customer for us. They were a client of ours. And yet we knew they were building internally some businesses that would compete with us. And people said, well, don't you find a conflict? And I said, listen, every good business is going to try to get better. And we have to be so good that no one wants to spend time trying to replace us. But we should always assume that people at any given time are going to do what's best for them. That's all of us as individuals, and that's businesses. So we're going to have partnerships with people. They may compete with us in another level, in a different segment. They may compete with us directly. So we're always looking for a much deeper kind of partnership. So as we're building Transcarent, there are some elements of our experience that are so fundamental, we believe that we had to own that. And so Bridge Health, which was the leading provider of surgical services in the country, they connected people with centers of excellence and ambulatory surgery centers. And what they really did was, first and foremost, said, do you really need the surgery? We've all seen the data that if you go to top centers of excellence on a regular basis, sometimes 20 or 30 or 40% of the time, they say, Blake, you don't really need this surgery. Well, that's pretty good news if someone tells you that, and it's heart surgery or something very serious. So first and foremost, Bridge was focused on only making sure that you have the surgery if it's necessary, and then giving you an option, not requiring you, giving you an option to go to the best places in your local area or remotely who provide that surgery, and making sure that even if you go to a good institution, you get the best doctors. So they did that. And then finally, the follow-up. So that was so fundamental to what we were offering. That's something that we did a merger early on, right after we launched Transcarent, brought the companies together. In other areas, we feel like we can create very special partnerships. In some cases, that means we'll invest in another company, but they're so good at what they do, and they're willing to truly partner with us, not to create a whole group of separate siloed products. We already have that in healthcare today. And for all of us, it feels terrible. You log on to one, you've got to log out, and then you've got to log on to another one. You need separate passwords. We wanted to create an experience. So we found partners who would do that with us and built really strong relationships. So when you go on to the Transcarent product, you don't see any different experience. If you're using the symptom checker and you say, okay, my back hurts, right there and then you can talk to a physician who might be able to provide assistance, or a physical therapist. There's no separation of that experience. And in our initial testing, people said they love that because we've taken the friction away. You look at your phone, it logs you on, it knows who you are, and all of a sudden it's answering the questions. And in many cases, people are texting, and within 60 seconds, they're on with a physician, and she can help answer any of their questions that they might have. That's the kind of experience they want. 24 hours a day on their terms, no copays, no paperwork, no narrow networks, just getting their questions answered, the information they want, real guidance where somebody's not saying, come here because they're on our network and we make more money. None of that. It's all going away. It's focused on their health. And I think what I'd say to some of the listeners is, as they're building businesses, think first and foremost about what's the best possible experience for the person using your product. Don't think about how you can make money. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about who you're going to offend. Think about what's the best possible experience, and think about where you have those experiences. You know, when Uber was created, they didn't worry about upsetting the existing taxi system. They didn't even worry about upsetting some of the governments who were making a lot of money from those systems. They said, what would be magical? What would be magical is if I said, right now I need a car in front of my house to take me somewhere, and I could press a button, and in minutes, it would magically appear. They didn't care how it was done. You know, we see people talking about high tech, high touch. That's actually wrong. Nobody cares about high tech. Technology should be in the background. It's used to create a high touch experience. You don't care that Uber uses a GPS satellite system and all kinds of software. You just care that that vehicle, whatever you want it, whether it's a limousine, a 10-person van, or just a regular sedan, it's there when they said it would be there. You know who the driver is. You know what their rating is. You don't have to make change and get all the money out to pay them. It's all, they've solved the consumer problem. And we do that in so many industries, except in healthcare. So that's what I think the knowledge takeaway is. In every industry, create experiences, not products, not solutions, but experiences that people really love and that they say, this is awesome. And in healthcare, we've kind of done the opposite. In fact, I'm sure you've received at some point a piece of paper at home, you open it, and it says in big, bold letters, this is not a bill. Now think about that. Somebody had to take the time to print on a piece of paper, this is not a bill. If so many people were confused to think it was a bill, why don't you fix it? And if it's not a bill, don't make it look like a bill. Don't confuse people. But instead, We said, we know this is confusing. We're not going to solve the problem. We're simply going to print on there, don't be confused. Really? That's not exactly what we should be doing. So that's that, I think, the takeaway. The new word is experience. The new word is alignment. Make sure you're on the same side as your customer. None of us doubt that Walmart is in there fighting for lower prices for us. We know that. I mean, we know they're working to give us lower prices. We know that Amazon's working to make it easy for us. Amazon, remember, you can go on and get a competitor to their own products on there, because they've said what our customers really want is two things: easy access, 24 hours a day, easy return policy. Amazing. You just take it back. You don't even have to package it up. You take it back, you drop it off, they scan a QR code, and you're done. It's magical, magical. That's what we need in healthcare.
You've brought up Walmart and Amazon. Obviously, Walmart just bought a telehealth startup. Amazon Care just launched and got their first client, which is a Peloton company. What do you think of these new players getting into primary care?
Look, I am very excited that anybody who enters the healthcare space with a focus on customers and on improving the experience, that excites me. So from that perspective, I couldn't be happier that we're getting fresh ideas, fresh investment, a fresh focus on what I would call health consumers. Some people still call them patients. I would call them health consumers. So I'm very, very excited about what they're doing. And I think I couldn't be more excited about what Walmart in particular is doing. There's more than 100 million people a week that go into Walmart stores. You're already going there. And so what better place to get some of your basic care? What better place? Remember, Walmart pioneered early on the $3 and $4 prescriptions. And that is really important. And, there's a lot of innovation happening in healthcare, but sadly, a lot of that's directed to people who can afford it. And what I love is these offerings are for all of us. I was doing some work on the south side of Chicago, and I was asking some of the under-resourced people I was working with, what's the best technology innovation that you've seen recently? And they said Uber or Lyft. And I was really surprised. And they said, you don't understand. There's no taxis that circulate here. There's the only way we're fully dependent on a bus until Uber, because we could get a car to our door. We knew who it was. We felt secure. The driver felt secure. And it was a beautiful thing. And it opened everything up to us. Technology can add absolute abundance. So we can deliver care now to people in rural settings, to people in inner city settings, behavioral health where you don't have to go out. The biggest reason that seniors don't get care is travel. That's why we have Uber Health and Lyft Health. And so now we can actually meet them where they are, in some cases at their homes, to deliver advice, counseling, care. So again, the other place they're at stores. So why not deliver care there? One of our investments is a company called Higgy, and they have health stations in all the places we go to: stores, pharmacies, health clubs. And, again, the idea there was meet people where they are, let them sit in a health station, take their blood pressure, read about things and the like. And so, again, I think that's where healthcare is moving. And we have it in every other area of the economy. We need it in healthcare. So I applaud the entry of Walmart, of Amazon, and of any of the other new entrants to the space.
Totally. So a backdrop, I feel like, of a lot of what we're talking about is just the success of digital health over the past year and the proliferation of digital options. Just in the first quarter of 2021, digital health startups raised 6.7 billion, which is an all-time record. That's from Rock Health. But I think with this new acceptance of digital and all the investment it's seeing and the intention it's getting from employers and health plans, there's pressure to raise money for leaders of these companies. There's pressure to SPAC or to go public. And I think some people, not many, are worried about down rounds. And generally whether a lot of these valuations and this activity is sustainable. What's your take on that, like as CEO of Transcarent, but also like what would be your take on that for others, like your advice for others who are facing these decisions?
Well, there's a few ways to approach it. So long ago, at one of my first public companies, we had just gone out, we had just done an IPO, and the bankers came and said, you should do a secondary. And in those days, it's changed a little bit, but in those days, you spent 2 to 3 weeks on the road doing 10, 12, 14 meetings a day to raise money in an IPO. It's changed quite a bit now. And so we were a little bit exhausted and we wanted to focus on running the business. And we said, well, I don't know if we really need to do a secondary. And one of the directors, a gentleman named Ted Phillip, he said, have you ever been to a party? And I looked at him kind of quizzically and I said, yes, I have. And he said, when they're bringing around the appetizers, do you take one? And I said, I always take one. He said, well, why do you take one? I said, well, I don't know when the tray is coming around again. And he said, right now they're passing the appetizers. You should take one because you don't know when the tray is coming around again. And so when you're given an opportunity in a frothy market like this, I think you should raise money. So that's number one. So given the opportunity, because as a CEO, the first goal is survival. You need to keep your company surviving. You need money to do that. So that's kind of principle one. Principle two is you have to remember to focus on building a great business, not a good business, but a great business. And so if you take money and you don't have the fundamentals or a way to get to the fundamentals, that's where you get to a problem. So there are a few valuations that have been high enough that you start to question, can they later get to those fundamentals? So if you go out and you say, we're going to take the company public and your valuation is already so high, public investors start to say, well, is there enough upside for us to double our money or even get, a 30% increase in our money? And when you get to the public market, they start to look at what's your growth rate or what's your profitability, what's your revenue growth. So there's real metrics to be had. And you can only go so long just on growth rate. So if you don't have those, then ultimately a public offering or an exit looks less appealing. So I think my guidance there is don't just go for the highest valuation. Make sure, one, the terms are right, and protect your employees and other people when you're accepting these large amounts of money, because we've seen some very big numbers, but actually if you get into it, the terms aren't very good. But most important for entrepreneurs, be careful who you take money from. There's a lot of money available in the market, but what we look for, and you mentioned this word earlier, is partnerships. We want people who will help us, not just give us the money, but who will help us build the business. And that's what we look for. That's what the best entrepreneurs look for. It's not the highest number. It's the people who will be great partners long-term and really help you build the business. And so I think there's a balance. There's some high valuations being paid, but also, and Livongo proved this, digital health is really just getting started. We're in the early innings of the digital health space. And in the future, there won't be a separate digital health space. Digital health will be an embedded part of healthcare. We will do some of it at home, and occasionally we'll go see a doctor because she or he will need to actually physically see us, touch us, potentially operate on us. But much of that can be done more safely and very completely at home. And so we're investing through our 7Wire Ventures early stage investment fund in companies that can actually bridge that gap to be better care at home than we've had before, and to be higher quality and lower cost care at home than we've had before. So we're seeing the consumerization of healthcare. We're seeing it move to an experience-based provision, and we're seeing true alignment start to happen between the real payers. And remember, the real payers in healthcare are all of us, for our sons and daughters and mothers and fathers and families, and our employers. We call other organizations payers. They're not, they're administrators. But there's only two payers. It's business and it's all of us. And that's where we have to start to focus healthcare.
Totally. I also wanted to kind of take listeners through, a big decision you've recently made, which was, to start Transcarent, but also to leave Teladoc's board. And I know Transcarent is more complicated than just being a care navigator, but it has navigation components, and theoretically it's navigating options like Teladoc, like Livongo. So can you just kind of walk us through that decision and why you ultimately left?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, at Livongo, we made the decision to merge with Teladoc because we thought both companies, it made sense to put them together to complete a care experience. And we had many people at Livongo who had chronic conditions calling and asking for more. They would call in the middle of the night and say, I have a sinus infection. And we would say, why are you calling us? And they'd say, you're the only ones who answer the phone. You're the only ones we trust, and you're the only ones who really know us. But we couldn't help them because we weren't physicians. And on the other hand, Teladoc, they knew that of their 10 million callers, something like 6 million of them had chronic conditions, and they knew they could be better. So putting the companies together was a beautiful strategic fit. It made a lot of sense. We had a digital front door to behavioral health. They had the back end fulfillment. So again, that made sense. They were international. We were only domestic. That made sense. So there was a lot of good reason to put the companies together to create this new kind of virtual experience. And that stands alone, and they're doing that, and that's terrific. And, as I said, Transcarent is something completely different than anything out there. It's about taking risk. It's about alignment with self-insured employers. It's creating an entirely new experience. So we may well partner with some of the great services that Teladoc provides because they have terrific services. So what we were worried about was if, in fact, we were to partner, it's hard to be on the board and also be a partner. And we didn't want there to be in the future any kind of conflict. And we also, no one knows as healthcare comes together, as I mentioned earlier, who are friends, who are frenemies, who are enemies. We didn't know where they're going to go. I didn't ever want there to be a conflict, nor did they. So we just decided before there were any issues, let's keep it clean. And that was my decision. And I think we both agreed that we wanted to make sure you always want to be above any kind of potential long-term conflict. And so that's why, it frankly wasn't for any other reason than to make sure that in the future, we never had any kind of conflict. But we're in very, very separate businesses. And it's interesting, everyone's trying to, like they did at Livongo. If you remember, I know you do, when Livongo first came out after going public, our stock initially went down after a really strong public launch. And the reason was no one knew what category to put us in. They said, are you a strips and meter company? Are you a diabetes company? Wait, you do hypertension. Are you a hypertension company? Are you a coaching company? And everyone wanted to put us into a box. And I equate that to with the iPhone. So is Apple a phone company? Are they a music company? Are they an app store company? Are they a technology company? No, they created something different. In fact, you look at their ads, they say, think different. And today, if you're under the age of 35, you use your phone only on average about 18% for calls. So is it even a phone? They created something very different. And most people would say they've created an experience. Once again, you look at their advertising, it's beautiful how connected it is. First, they said, think different. Then think about the experience of opening the box for an Apple phone. You're like, wow, this is not the traditional, mundane cardboard box. This is a beautiful box. I might want to save the box. Wow, these are beautiful ear pods. This is really, and people don't think of it as technology as much as they think of the experience. Wow, you can hear better. These fit better. The camera, you can take pictures that are so good. And everything about it is understanding the experience that we have. And even their stores, you go to their stores, you go to the Genius Bar. Well, people think that their workers love to work at where do you work? I work at the Genius Bar. You must be a genius. That feels good to them, feels good to us to go up there and have somebody who's not charging you, just there to make your experience better. So that's I think the exact same kind of different experience we're trying to create. So, no, it's not about navigation. Does it include navigation? Yes, but I would argue that if you have to navigate, you've done something wrong. It's kind of like if we drop a glass in your place and there's broken glass all over the floor, you have two options. You could clear a little path and walk through there. And when guests come over, you could say, here, I'll show you where to walk so your feet don't get cut. Or you could clean up the glass. One is a navigation solution. And it says here, I can always be there to navigate. The second one is fixing the problem. We're here to fix the problem. In fact, we're making navigation free. There's no cost for navigation. The idea that someone wants to charge up front $5 or $6 per employee per month makes no sense to me. It's it's the same as people who say we're going to charge. And remember, we changed this model at Livongo. We said you only pay when you use it. Other people were saying no, everybody should pay. Imagine walking by a restaurant and they say you should pay. You say, well, I haven't eaten there. You should still pay each month just in case you decide to eat here. We all would think that's crazy, and yet that's healthcare. We're saying everybody should pay even if you don't use these services. I can't think of another example like that. We actually like to pay for things we use. So that's what we're trying to move healthcare in line with the rest of the market. And that would be my advice to people who are listening. Build businesses that make sense to you, that fit with what's happening in the rest of the world around us.
Totally. I think we have time for one more question, Glenn. I think it's fair to say you've made a little bit of a habit of spotting trends in digital health, before they really come to fruition. There was a lot of people who in the early days didn't really understand Livongo, like you just highlighted. There's probably people now who don't totally understand Transcarent. Do you have any advice for founders or even investors who are earlier in their career and want to build billion-dollar businesses and spot trends?
Sure. Well, The first thing I'd say is don't focus on building $1 billion business. Focus on solving a problem. And I see a lot of people say, we want to build $1 billion business. Other people, when they come in to pitch us in our venture firm at 7Wire, I always ask them, do you have an exit plan? And if they have one, we almost never invest.
Wow.
People say, well, why is that? And I said, because I want people who love the business, who said, if I was doing this forever, I would be okay. At Livongo, when we announced an $18.5 billion deal, a lot of our people were upset. They said, why would we do that? They were going to become millionaires and they were upset. They said, I don't care about the money. I love what we're doing. We're helping 1 million people. Like, we love that. We love this company. We don't want anything to change. And so you want to build, first and foremost, a company that's solving problems, real problems, important problems, difficult problems. Second, you want to build a company that people love to work at. And if you do that, then the rest will come. The financials will come. So, my advice is focus on a solution. And relative to being early, I think, again, there's, people, I can remember growing up, and if you said to somebody, there's this entrepreneur who wants to start a new business in coffee and charge $5 for a cup of coffee, people would have thought like you were the craziest person in the world. Coffee, it's been around forever. People pay a nickel, it's free, a quarter, $5, and you have to leave the office. We have a machine right here. Who in the world would leave the office, wait in line to get a cup of coffee? And yet Starbucks came along. So there's never a time that's too early or too late to improve the experience that we have in almost anything. We've seen that in every case. There were Hershey's chocolate bars. Now there's 100 innovators making really interesting chocolates. And it's like, really? You're going to go into the business of making, hasn't Hershey solved that? And the answer is no. People want more. People want different. The other thing I'd say is, you were very charitable of saying, some people are surprised and interested that I'm early or I have these different ideas. People are angry. People do not like that we're upsetting the apple cart. When we decided to give strips away for free, there were a lot of people who they were trying to kill us. They wanted us gone. They were putting up blocks. They were saying, we had companies, large payers, who said to our customers, if you keep using Livongo, we will raise your other rates. That's completely illegal. They did it. They said, well, then sue us. We were too little to sue them. Luckily, we had some great customers who said, they're trying to make it better. You haven't done it in 20 years. We're going to stick with them. And they were brave and they stuck with us. But similarly, the models, when I say we're not going to charge up front, we're going to take risk. We're not going to charge per employee per month for navigation services. That makes no sense to me. There's a lot of people who don't like that. And they aren't happy with me. So, that takes a certain amount of bravery. I don't think there's a bunch of people who are ever going to hire me for a job at their company anymore. They're not happy with me right now. So that said, what's important to me is that we actually fix our healthcare system for everybody, not just for wealthy people. I'll just leave you with one thought, and that is, there are certain companies where in the past, if the CEO had a problem with her heart, she would go to 1 or 2 or 3 of the best places in the country to get it looked at. But if the janitor there had a problem with his heart, he'd go to the local place because that's all he could afford. If you're using Transcarent, both those people would have an option at no cost to go to the best place in the world or the best places in the world. So imagine that, the exact same treatment for the CEO and the janitor, because they deserve it, because that's the best solution. If you get heart surgery wrong and you have to do it a second time, it can cost 3 times as much. If you do heart surgery when you don't need to, And a lot of that happens. So what we've said is everybody's going to get the same world-class options. Doesn't matter what role you are. That's what we want to deliver in our healthcare system of the future. It's a healthcare system for everyone, where everyone's treated the same, where we eliminate all the barriers, the co-pays, the things that, I mean, why would you want to put a copay on insulin when someone needs it to stay alive? I don't understand. I just don't understand why you would pay, because we know what copays do. Copays means some people can't afford it. So you have someone with type 1 insulin. We know that they will die. We know that they will be hospitalized without it. And you're putting a barrier in front of it to say, we're going to make it expensive for you to get this. So some people have to trade off between getting their kids breakfast and getting their insulin. And those people are good people, and they get their kids breakfast and they end up in the hospital and we pay for it. That can't make sense in our healthcare system in the future. That's what we're going to change. And we're going to go after insulin. We're going to go after every high cost drug, but we're also going to be fair, because if you find a cure for hepatitis C, you ought to get rewarded. And we need to figure out a way to reward those drug companies, because over 5 years, taking their drug is going to save us money and it's going to improve people's lives. That's what we want to reward. So we've got to figure out how to do this right. That's what Transcarent is about. That's why we need the people watching this, the entrepreneurs, the brave folks out there who are going to go and help us create this health and care system of the future.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Glenn. And thanks for, just giving us some really specific insights and advice as an operator.
Great. Happy to do it anytime.
Let's pass it back to Becky.
Thank you so much to Blake and Glenn for their time today. And I don't know about you, but that's left me really excited for the forum next week. If you're interested in joining, as we do have a few places left, then you can register your interest at our website. Details to follow. See you there.